Eating more frequently increases your metabolic rate and therefore can cause you to lose weight. Is that fact or fiction? And that is what we're going to discuss in today's video. So I was having a talk with somebody, they go to the gym, and she was telling me how in gym culture, the big thing is that you need to eat more frequently, okay? And that's to keep your metabolism going. And that helps you with your weight loss and I suppose with generating muscle, but I think that's a little contradictory because when you generate a lot of muscle, you can potentially gain weight. So I think that there's a little contradiction there in the weight loss circles, but this is what she's saying. And so she says that her trainer tells her she needs to eat like every 2 hours, every 2.5 hours to keep her metabolism going. Now, first, let's just kind of start with let's start by defining what is the metabolic rate. Metabolic rate essentially refers to the rate at which the body burns calories, right? The rate at which the body utilizes the energy. So we're putting in energy in the form of food and then we're burning it. So food, energy, we talk about calories, and then how quickly we burn those calories, how quickly you burn that energy, right, in relation to time, that is called the metabolic rate. Now, how is it that eating food can increase the metabolic rate? This is the question. So it can, but it depends. What does it depend on? It depends on what you are eating. So I don't know if you've ever heard, there's something called the thermic effect of food, and that essentially refers to how much calories, like of the food that you eat, how much of that, right, the energy from that food that you're eating actually goes to the process of digesting that food. That's the thermic effect of food. So talking about the three macronutrients, we have protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Now, protein, the macronutrient protein, has the highest thermic effect, meaning that for protein, say for example, we're doing 100 grams. So for 100 calories of protein, okay, about 30 to 35% of those 100 calories of protein will be lost or used in the process of digesting that protein once you eat it. Okay, so what you're absorbing, what your body is going to get, right, what's going to be left for the rest of your body is going to be about, say, 65, 70 of those 100 calories. So if you say you're just eating straight protein, and you might think, oh, this is 100 calories of protein that I'm getting. No, you're only getting about 65, maybe 70 of those calories of protein, because 35 was used at the time of eating and digesting that protein. So protein has a pretty high thermic effect. Now compare that to carbohydrates. If you're having 100 calories, what you're eating is 100 calories of carbohydrates. Now only 10 to 15 of those 100 calories will be lost in the process of digesting the carbohydrate. So you're going to have about 85 to 90 of those 100 calories of carbohydrate that is going to be available for the rest of the body to function, to utilize for its energy. Okay, now going to fat, that's the third macronutrient we're talking about. And for digesting fat, say you have 100 calories of fat, only 5 of those calories will be utilized in the process of digesting the fat. So fat has the lowest thermic effect. Okay, protein has the highest thermic effect, carbohydrates intermediate, fat the lowest. So in your meals, right, we said at the start of this, when I said if you're eating frequently, if that increases your metabolic rate, it depends. And what it depends on is how much of that meal is protein. So if you're eating a meal that's most like a pasta meal and you have a tiny bit of meat sauce, and maybe your sauce has like a little olive oil and so on and so forth, you are probably, say for example, it's like 300 calories. No, let's say it's 1,000 calories, just for easy calculation of the numbers. So if it's mostly carbohydrates, then maybe, no, let's use 300. So they say the average thermic effect of a meal is actually only 10%, right? So if you have a meal that's like 100, if you have 1,000 calories, then only 100 of those calories are going to be utilized in digesting the food. That's average, right? Just randomly. Now, if you increase the amount of protein in that meal to like 50%, so half of the meal is protein and half is carbohydrates and other things, right? So it means that half, 50%, the 500 calories of protein, you're going to lose a third of that. So you're going to lose like 150 calories just from digesting it, plus maybe 10%, 50. So you're going to lose maybe 200 calories in just for digesting the food, okay? Compared to if it was mostly starch, where you would have lost maybe like, 100 calories. So in terms of the question of whether or not eating frequently causes your metabolic rate to increase, it simply depends on how much protein you're eating, right? If you're eating a lot of protein, then yes, you're going to be burning. Your metabolic rate is going to increase because you're going to need more calories. You're going to need to burn more calories to digest all that protein in your meal. Now, the caveat to this is that if you're eating protein-rich meals, you're actually not going to feel like eating very frequently. Why is that? The answer to that is that protein specifically is the macronutrient that decreases the hunger hormone the most, right? So when we're eating, it's like this balance, or you could say orchestra of different hormones. Some hormones telling you that you're hungry, another set of hormones telling you that you're no longer hungry. And so there's this intermix of all the different hormones that control ultimately how much you eat. And the makeup of your food, of course, has a big determining factor on which of these hormones are stimulated, for how long they're stimulated, how long you stay satisfied for, and so on. So a protein-rich meal is going to decrease the hunger hormone the most, and for that reason, a protein-rich meal is going to cause you to remain satisfied for the longest. So ultimately, if you're eating protein-rich meals, you're just not going to be able to eat them every 2-3 hours. And so people some of the people in the gym, I'm sure that some people kind of understand more of the details, but maybe I believe for the average person, they're not realizing that they should be cautious about the makeup of the macronutrients in the meal. How much protein, how much carbohydrates, how much fat, okay? And so they're probably just eating anything, probably focusing more on calories. And so they are saying, oh, I'm going to eat like 200 calories. And then for the most part, it's 200 starch calories. Because if it's like a snack bar that is kind of heavy on carbs and sugar or whatever, right? So they're having all the carbohydrates. And so because they're not burning as much with that, they're eating more frequently to try to make up, right? To kind of help the metabolic rate, but it's only being helped by like 15%, right? So only 15% of the calories are being burned compared to like up to 35% with protein. So they're eating more frequently, getting 15% burn of energy metabolism each time, right? But that still probably doesn't add up to as much as what you would get if you had a lot of protein, right? So back to the whole issue of protein causing you to be more satisfied. Protein-rich meals cause you to stay satisfied for longer. And so when you eat a real heavy protein meal, you're not going to be hungry for 4-5 hours, depending on how much you ate, right? And so that's the big distinguishing factor, and why it's not just black and white. It's not just total calories, but what is the makeup of those calories, okay? So for that question that I started with first, eating more frequently causes you to helps to increase your metabolic rate, and so helps weight loss. That is a myth, because if you're eating a protein-rich meal, that yes is going to have higher metabolism, but because protein is so satiating, it causes you to be satisfied for longer, to remain without hunger for longer. You're ultimately not going to need to eat frequently. You probably won't need to eat more than every 5 hours. Okay, now the benefit of not eating very frequently, and this is probably for another video, and I've touched on this in the past, is that if you're able to stay for up to 5 hours or more, depending on what you eat, without eating with those nice long gaps in eating, it means that your body gets a nice break from insulin, which is the fat storage hormone. And so because you have these long stretches where you're not in fat storage mode, in between you can actually access your fat stores. So for people who are trying to lose weight, they're able to kind of go these long periods and access fat stores, and so they're able to burn some of that excess fat and obtain some weight loss. Okay, so for metabolism, don't just think, oh, I'm going to eat more frequently and then my metabolic rate will increase because I need to use energy to digest the food. No, it depends on what you're eating. Now, let's just touch quickly on what affects metabolic rate. Several things. One of the obvious ones, I guess you can say, is your muscle mass, because muscle is more dense, more bulky, and so the muscles need to utilize more energy in its functioning, movement, flexion, contraction, cleaning up, and so on and so forth. So the bigger your muscle mass, the higher your metabolic rate is going to be compared to somebody who has muscle wasting or whatever. They're going to be having a lower metabolic rate because they're using less energy, because they have less muscles to use the energy. Okay, by extension, age also impacts metabolic rate, because the older you get, you tend to have some loss of muscle mass. So again, lower energy. Also, gender, men have more bigger muscles and bigger bones as well than women, and so they're going to be burning more energy, because these muscles and bigger bones are going to be utilizing more energy for metabolism. Okay, physical activity, obviously, the more physically active you are, it means, of course, you're kind of using your body more, and so when you're using something, you're going to be needing more energy to sustain it. So physical activity also helps increase metabolic rate. And then just generally hormonal function, there's so many different hormones that impact metabolic rate. The thyroid hormone, so people who have overactive thyroid glands, they have a high metabolic rate because thyroid hormone triggers metabolic processes, metabolism. High stress hormones, adrenaline, you're going to use more energy. So fight flight reaction prepares you for danger or whatever, and so you're going to be utilizing more energy. And just other hormones, steroid hormones, the estrogen, testosterone, and so on and so forth. So basically the hormonal makeup, hormonal functioning, that's also going to impact metabolic rates, right? So yes, food to an extent can increase. Eating increases metabolism, but it depends on what you're eating. Predominantly, more protein means high metabolic rate, because protein needs way more energy for digestion, and so that means protein has a higher thermic effect compared to moderate thermic effect of carbohydrates, and then much lower thermic effect of fat. So ultimately, you want to have food that definitely has a bit of protein. At least a third of your intake should be protein. So if you can spread it out with your main meals, a third protein, roughly a third fat, roughly a third carbohydrates, with the carbohydrates being complex. So fiber-rich vegetables and grains and things like that. So that's like an easy balance. Now, of course, it's going to vary depending on each person's situation and activity level and goals and health, etc. Right? So it's always individualized, but ultimately it is a myth that eating more frequently increases metabolic rate, because ultimately, if you're eating higher protein in your meals, you will not want to eat frequently, because you will remain satisfied for several more hours than if you're having protein depleted meals. I hope you all found this super helpful, and you can leave any questions in the comments. If you like this video, feel free to share with others, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell so that you can be informed of when new videos go up. All right, thanks, bye.